Welcome to another episode of the Growth Through Adversity podcast with your host, Ragnar the Warwolf. What is up, people? So, today we are going to talk about some fun stuff. We're going to talk about balancing a busy, demanding career with training, right? Something that I am very familiar with personally because, ironic, in all the irony of the world, as a fitness coach, actually 90% of my job is sedentary. It is sitting behind a desk, behind a computer, and it takes up a lot of my time. So I've really had to get kind of creative on how I keep myself at a high level of fitness while being highly optimized with time and making it fit super demanding, super stressful, and super busy career. So I'm going to give you guys some of the tricks that I use on myself. And really, what I've found over the years is that you don't need more time. Time is not the issue. Time, we're all constrained on time. Everybody that's, not a 20-year-old kid living at their parents' house is tight on time, right? Work takes time, family takes time, everything that we do takes time. And it's all so time management is generally most people's problem. It's not that they don't have enough time, it's that they don't manage their time properly. And we won't go too deeply into time management. That's like a subject I could do a whole episode on. Um, but what I will say is what really helped me with time management was auditing my time. So, and it's annoying as fuck and you'll drive everybody around you crazy. But if you set a timer for 15 minutes throughout an entire day, or ideally an entire like work week, 5 days, and take a note of exactly what you did in the last 15 minutes, and then audit that at the end of the week, you'll be amazed at how much time you spend doing stupid shit, scrolling Instagram, um, you know, responding to messages that you probably don't need to respond to right at that moment, surfing the web, sitting there not doing anything. Like you'll be amazed on how much time you waste. And then you can start to try to constrain that time and to use it more effectively. So, but really, what I found is you don't need more time. You need to manage your time better, and you need a system around training. Everything like, I mean, system scale, chaos fails, right? So you have to, and that applies to everything you do. So you have to have something that's systematized and that is designed to fit a super busy life, right? And if you do it right, like, I mean, there's no reason that in, 5 to 6 hours a week of training and meal prepping and doing the basic stuff, you can't stay lean, stay shredded, stay healthy, stay athletic, keep moving well, year round, right? Without getting burned out and just wasting a bunch of time. And you can also do it in such a way that you have relatively predictable progress. Now, it does vary from person to person, but you can do it with pretty predictable progress. If you don't, what I've seen is that you end up with like I've seen a lot of guys that get on this, on this craze where they're like, okay, I'm going to start a fitness journey, and so they go to the gym and they go like 6 days a week, 2 hours a day, and they do that for about 2 weeks, and they get burned out, right? Because it's not something you can sustain, and it's not something that you can stick to long time. When I was a professional athlete and I was fighting, we did train 6 days a week, and I trained 2 hours a day, but that was like literally all I did. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have and in fact, as this business started picking up, that was when I like had to retire from fighting because I couldn't invest the amount of time and energy that both of them needed to do both successfully. So I had to kind of pick. And, at 36 years old, this seemed like the smarter choice. Although I do miss fighting regularly. So, and then diet falls apart every time you have a travel week or every time that something just doesn't go your way. I hear that all the time, right? So again, and that's something that we're going to talk about how to deal with it. And you just overall end up stressed in with it to dealing with inflammation, exhausted, burned out, and you don't ever make progress. So you'll go to the gym for a little while and then you'll fall off. It's like a loop. It's like go to the gym for a little while, maybe start to see the first vestiges of progress, get burned out, get frustrated, stop, and then start from scratch 3 months later. So we don't want that, right? And that's kind of what helped me come up with the Primal Method. Is I originally built this basically for myself, you know what I mean? And I've just kind of refined it over the years. But what we really focus on is, and those of you that are in the program, you obviously know it's 3 to 4 days of hard training per week, right? At about the 45 to 60 minute range is what we're really shooting for. That's our target. And we want like 4 to 6 hard movements mixed in there. and we're either doing like a full body split or we're splitting it upper lower, something like that. So it's very efficient and we're getting a lot of frequency. So why low volume and high intensity works is because those high intensity sets give your body the stimulus that it needs to grow and adapt and change. You don't actually need a whole lot of like mediocre sets or a whole lot of kind of hard sets. You need like really one or two really, really hard sets, and that's enough stimulus for your body to get the signal of, hey, we're not really strong enough to do what we're trying, what's being demanded of us. And we don't have enough muscle mass to be doing what's demanded of us. And to start to grow and adapt and change, right? Another theme is focusing on compound movements, right? So if you focus on compound movements, these are movements that work a lot of different joints at once simultaneously over. So think the difference between a bench press, which is going to work, the elbows are flexing, the shoulders are flexing, many different joints are moving in unison. So a lot of different muscles are getting worked at once versus something like one-armed preacher curl, where we're just totally isolating the bicep. Now, there's nothing wrong with a one-armed preacher curl, and there is a place for some isolation work in a program, but the majority of it should be made of compound movements because that's what's going to get you into the gym, out of the gym, and get you the most bang for your buck. And it's also the most functional type of training. So when we naturally bend down to pick up something in our house, something heavy, move a piece of furniture, we don't do it with our elbow locked on a table and just move it with the bicep. We bend down at the knees and hips. Ideally we keep our back flat and we lift with proper mechanics, and it is a compound movement. So training your body to be stronger at compound movements is much more functional than isolation movements. And then we cut out completely junk volume. So you'll see a lot of guys that go to the gym, they train 5-6 days a week. They're in there I see them at my gym that I go to all the time. And I'm like, fuck, they're there before I get there. They're there after I leave, and they don't change. Like it's year in and year out. They're the same. And you almost feel bad for them, but it's like, I don't really feel bad for them because they're doing it to themselves and the information's out there. And what it is that and I say it all the time. It's not doing more. More isn't better. Better is better. So if you can work out for 2 hours, and after about an hour, your body's in a state where it's like, it's used up its glycogen stores, your intensity's decreased, your body's ability to recover from that amount of volume has exponentially decreased. So you're really working out for no reason at that stage. You're just beating the shit out of your joints, and you're working out for a reason. You're beating the shit out of your joints. But you're not getting any like hypertrophic adaptation, right? So you're not getting any changes. You're not getting any strength changes. That ship has sailed. That's the 30-minute to 1 hour mark is where that you're going to get the best results in that. So we want to cut junk volume out. And again, we do that by, like I said earlier, we focus on low volume, but high intensity. And we focus on staying in an amount of volume that is effective, in a volume range that is effective, enough sets and reps that they're effective to give our body the stimulus that they need, but not so many that it cannot, recover from it. Might not be the platform. Yeah, dude, I'm old and fat. Me fighting on March 22 is not going to happen. I'm so far out of fighting shape. It's not even fun. I'm like 190 pounds right now, and I used to fight at 145. So yeah, that's a random question. I appreciate it. I'm a little humbled by it, but it's not going to happen. I had a guy on Instagram asked if I wanted to fight in March. I think it's a promoter asked if I wanted to fight in March. I haven't had a question like that in a while. That's humbling. All right. So I lost my train of thought there. And so minimize junk volume, right? We want effective volume in an effective volume range. And why this works so well is because we have stimulus without cooking the central nervous system, right? So that's kind of the balancing game that we're playing, right? Is that too much volume, too much intensity, you get your central nervous system is unable to recover from it. So if you think about recovery as like as a line, right? So this is your baseline. So if we have one line here, it's our baseline. What happens when we do a really hard training session is that our body is actually going to dip below that baseline, and then it's going to recover and it's going to hypercompensate. So it's going to come back up over that baseline, and you're going to create a new baseline higher, right? That's how your body grows muscle. It's how your body grows strength. But there is that overcompensation. So you're going to have that dip. And if you're overdoing it constantly and overloading your central nervous system, that dip's just going lower and lower and lower, and you're not giving your body that recovery phase. to overcompensate, to hypercompensate, and come back up above. And that's when you start to get just cumulative stress and really bad things start to happen. You start to get systemic inflammation. You start to get overuse injuries. And if you push it really far, you end up overtrained, and it takes a very long time to recover from being overtrained. Now, I will say, I think like the whole overtrain threat is pretty conflated. That's something that really only like high level athletes that are training a lot need to worry about. But you can get into what's called an overreach state where you're like on the border of overtrain, and it's still not a good thing. It's not fun. And either way, even if you're mildly overreached, it's going, and this is the other thing that like you have to take into account is that your whole life doesn't revolve around the gym. So if you end up in a slightly overreached state, it's going to affect every other element of your life. It's going to affect your sleep, which is going to affect your work. It's going to affect your energy, which is going to affect your work. And so that's why training properly will assist you in your career. You know, you'll feel better, you'll look better, you'll be more confident. Overtraining and overdoing it will have the opposite effect. You'll be run down, you'll be burned out, you'll be moody. It's just not a good thing. So I hope everybody's following me there, because that's kind of the training side of things that we look at. And like I said, to kind of recap it, what we really want to focus on is training hard 3 to 4 days a week, somewhere in the 60-minute range, whether it's 45 minutes, whether it's 60 minutes. The minimum is about 30. You factor in a warm up into that, and you're really, I'd say 30 is probably the minimum that you're going to spend in the gym and get good results. But somewhere in the 45 to 60-minute range, definitely no longer than an hour and a half. If you're very well adapted and you're conditioned, you can go for an hour and a half, and you can have an effective hour and a half. But beyond that, you're really beyond the hour mark, you're starting to decay. Beyond the hour and a half mark, it's just like pretty much pointless. So, no wasted reps, training with intention, training hard, and then stopping and letting your body go through that compensation and that growth phase, right? Again, like I've had this discussion with people of like, I'll program a certain amount of stuff and it's mapped out and it's thought out for a whole year, and we'll adjust it as we go. And it's like there's phases, and there's accumulation phases, and there's all kinds of stuff in there that's worked into it. And then they'll be like, yeah, I did what you had, and then I didn't feel like I was done, so I did like an extra 5 sets of bench press. And I'm like, fuck, why? You know what I mean? Like, it's mapped out. There's a reason for it. You know what I mean? This is why you hired me. There is a reason for everything that we do. None of it's arbitrary or random. When you go way above it, it's just as bad as going underneath of it, because now I got to try to like compensate for that in the future. So don't do too much, don't do too little. Train with the proper amount of volume and with very high intensity, and always focus on progressive overload. So if you're not adding a rep, as often as you possibly can, adding weight periodically. If you're not progressively getting stronger by adding weight over time, you know what I mean? Then it's just nothing else matters, because that is like the core of training. Cool. So that kind of makes up like the training side of things, how we structure the training and why we structure the training like that. Let's talk about nutrition. So the key with nutrition and making it time efficient and balancing training, nutrition, and a busy career and family and everything else that you're trying to balance is going to be simple, repeatable, non-negotiable, right? So again, you don't need a chef, you don't need to get super fancy with this. You need to create a system, and I have a system that works very well for me. I have other clients that do it quite different than I do. So we kind of train everybody when they come in on our system of meal prep. But over time, like for example, I went and stayed in Texas, and I stayed with my dad for a while, and he takes like literally all of his chicken and his pork loins and his venison and everything that he's going to eat, all the protein he's going to eat for the next, like 2 months. And he smokes it all. He's got a big wood smoker, and he smokes it all. And then he chops it up. He dices it into cubes, and then he vacuum seals it in little 6-ounce packs, and then he freezes all of those. And when he wants one, he pulls it out of the freezer and he thaws it in the microwave real quick. And I was like, man, that's fucking brilliant. So I am going to invest in a vacuum sealer and start doing it like that, because I honestly think the way he does it is better than the way I do it. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, whether you do it 3 days at a time, whether you do it a week at a time, whether you do it 2 weeks at a time, whether you do it like Jimmy does it and do it 2 months at a time. Doesn't really matter. It's just coming up with a system that is effective for you. And like I can't stress enough, like how I was saying, he smoked everything. I cook everything on the grill. You can cook everything in a big pot, but a similar protein source that you can cook in bulk makes this process so much easier, right? Because then you just cook it. If it's ground, it's already ready. You just got to cook it, weigh it, freeze it, you're done, right? Carbohydrates are the same way. If you eat rice, if you eat quinoa, if you eat whatever. So the key is like pick one group and use those food groups for your next batch of meal prep. And then if you want variety and adjustment, then the next time use different ones. So for example, you could use chicken breast for your first, 2 week phase there, chicken breast and rice. And then the next time you could use quinoa and ground turkey. And so just kind of shifting like that really makes it easy. And if you're like on the road, so this is what I see most people. Most people are able to get the meal prep down while they're at home. It's pretty fucking simple. It honestly saves you a lot of time, saves you a lot of like mental bandwidth of having to figure out what to eat every single day, which I fucking hate. I just want to have my food cooked and ready, and I just want to eat it. I don't want to have to think about it. So it saves you a lot of the stress and of cleaning. I hate cleaning after cooking. It's just not my favorite thing. So, just meal prepping it makes it all of those things become infinitely easier. So I see a lot of people are able to get the meal prep down within the first couple months at home. But what fucking kills them is travel. And we travel. If you're busy for work, you travel for pleasure, like we travel, right? So and meal prep falls apart when we travel because even if you're staying in Airbnbs, their kitchens suck. They don't have the right stuff. It's a romantic dream that you're going to meal prep while you're on vacation. But even the last time in Texas, I meal prepped much less than I would have wanted to. But I stayed on track by doing things like getting the microwavable pouches of rice for carbs. And then, buying things like a whole chicken, a whole rotisserie chicken. And if you're not going to track stuff and keep track of your nutrients, a great system is what we call protein anchoring. And that's just where like 50% of your plate is some kind of lean protein source, 25% of your plate is a carbohydrate source, and 25% of your plate is a vegetable source. If you do that, macronutrient wise, you're almost in line, and you're able to just kind of like barbecues. That's what I'll do. I'll just grab a lot of protein and a little bit of the other stuff, and stay away from like the really scary stuff. But that can be a
You
very effective.
post that breakdown that you just said with the vegetables and the protein and lean protein.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think I have like a picture of a plate, but I'll post it in the group for you. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I will post that in there for you guys. Cool. But yeah, so protein anchoring can be super, super effective for when you're, just not able to track, don't have a lot of control over what you're eating. If you're eating mostly protein, especially a lean protein, if they have a chicken option or something like that, you're going to be on the right track. And even if it's a little fattier protein, you're going to be better off like that than just like, mowing down a pile of gravy and, all kind and cake and all kinds of crazy stuff. Um, so, and why this is super important when we're traveling. And then also another thing that I'll do when I'm traveling is I'll cut my meals back. So instead of like 3 meals throughout the day, I'll make sure I'm hitting my protein goals. I'll really like just track protein. I'll track the protein I'm eating, and I'll throttle it back to 2 meals. Cause I'm like, if I'm traveling, I don't have a lot of control over what I'm eating. I would rather be under my caloric goal and not get fat than be over it and start to gain weight, the wrong type of weight. And as long as I'm hitting my protein goal, I'm going to get relatively close. And even if I'm, 400 or 500 calories under, it's not going to kill me. It's not going to hurt me. It's temporary, right? But if I'm a month away and every day I'm 300 to 400 calories over, well, we're going to pack on 5, 6, 7 pounds on that trip. And that sucks. So the idea of traveling is you're not going to make a whole lot of progress a lot of the times. I mean, sometimes maybe, but you really want to maintain. You want to maintain staying in the habit of going to the gym, training, being active, making good choices. You want to maintain the habit of eating relatively well, and you want to maintain where you were at so that when you come back, you pick up where you left off. You don't have to make up 2 months. That sucks, right? It also helps keep your hormones stable and keep everything kind of balanced out because your body gets very used to eating clean and healthy, and it likes it and it adapts to it. And if you kind of switch the flip the switch and go crazy on it, it's not going to love you for that. And then kind of the last thing that we got to think about is if we're going to talk about demanding careers and training is recovery and stress management. So, um, this is like the hidden multiplier, man. If you can get your recovery down, everything else, and it's probably the least, it's probably the thing that people think about the least is recovery. But remember, it's 50% of the equation. 50% of the equation is going to the gym, breaking down the muscles. The other 50% is eating the right foods, taking the right supplements, and sleeping and recovering properly, right? So you can do all that hard work on the front end, but if your back end sucks, then your body's not going to change and you're just going to stay where you're at. So recovery wise, sleep is a controversial subject. So definitely the data says that somewhere in the 7 to 9 hour range is the best. Now, I will add the caveat that I am a firm believer that different people are different and have different tolerances and needs for sleep. So I think as equally as just trying to hit an arbitrary number, I think it's kind of figuring out where you feel good. And what I really look for is if you're so fucking exhausted during the day, you need, three white monsters to stay awake, or 10 cups of coffee. You're probably not getting enough sleep. If every time you sit down you're dozing off, you're definitely not getting enough sleep. And just kind of like how you feel, your mood and your energy level throughout the day. And if you feel good and you have good energy and you're not like falling asleep every time you sit down and you're at your desk during the day, you're probably sleeping enough. And if you are, then you're probably not. So you can kind of modulate that to how your body responds. But that's what I look for more than just an arbitrary number. But definitely getting the right amount of sleep for me, 6 hours is 6 to 7 hours is perfect. Under 6 hours, I feel it. Under 5 hours, I'm miserable. So I kind of know my numbers, and I just really try to make it a priority to make sure I get that 6 to 7 hour window. And another thing that can help that helps me a lot is an evening walk after work. So obviously, when I'm here in Alaska, I do it on a treadmill in the winter because it's not fucking cool outside right now. In my opinion, for walking, I don't really appreciate walking in -10-degree weather. So I set up my little treadmill in the living room, and I get about 20 to 30 minutes of brisk walk, maybe a ruck if I'm feeling frisky, and that can really help. Just kind of release the stress, get some endorphins going, kind of just wind down from the day, from being glued to all these blue screens all day, and just kind of get me ready to wind down phase. Sun exposure first thing in the morning, if you're somewhere that has sunshine, if you're one of the lucky ones, on your retinas specifically. So going outside without sunglasses is one of the best ways to train your circadian rhythm. That's your wake up time, and to really just anchor that as your wake up time in the morning and create a good cycle, right? Because that's like primordially that, when you woke up and the sun was on your eyes, that was, okay, it's time to be awake. And when the sun was gone, then it's like, okay, cool, it's time to be asleep or we're going to get eaten. So yeah, that can really help. And then just training, obviously, like hitting your workouts 3-4 days a week is going to really help improve your sleep. And I was talking about this the other day. So things that you can watch. One of my favorite metrics is HRV, so heart rate variability. If you have a smartwatch, it'll track it. High heart rate variability indicates that your body is not stressed, that your systems aren't stressed. High would be something over 80, by whatever measurement they're using there. And low could indicate that you're getting sick, or that you're maybe slightly overtrained, you're not recovering well. Something's going on where you're stressed at like a neurological level. And it's something that I would kind of take note of. So, and low would be like sub 50, right? And you can track that. Again, don't track, watch trends, not day, it will shift day to day. But watch kind of trends. You'll see trends where you're trending higher and trends where you're trending lower, and they're just good to take note of. And then the other things are just kind of how you feel, like really keeping track of like your energy level, you know what I mean? Just all the different things that are going to, your sleep, just all, soreness, joint pain, all of those can be things, your body trying to let you know that something isn't necessarily right. And again, I always say it's easy to say this and it's difficult to do this, but try to compartmentalize stress as much as you can. Believe me, again, I add the caveat that I know that's easier said than done, but if you're carrying work stress home and you're not sleeping because of it and you're fucking super wound, believe me, I run my own business, I know how that goes. But trying to find ways to compartmentalize that and to have a greater resilience towards just stress overall, to where it doesn't affect you at a physiological level as much, I think is really important long term. That's something that you can practice and can train and can get better at. Cool. And that is basically like, I mean, that's kind of my TED talk for the day, man. I think that kind of covers the some of the stuff that has helped me over the years. Just, manage a crazy busy schedule with wanting to stay healthy, wanting to stay fit, wanting to take care of myself. And, the couple of little things like mastering meal prep is absolutely key. Creating a training system that's sustainable for you that, whether it's 3 days a week, 4 days a week, something that you can stick to long term that isn't like, so demanding that you're just going to quit the first time things get chaotic. And then like, really focusing on getting better at recovery. That was something that took me into my 30s, mid 30s, really to really start focusing on recovery, on sleeping better, on recovering better, on all that stuff. And it's made a big difference. Really, really made a big difference in both progress in the gym and also just overall, like I don't get sick as much anymore. Like I hardly knock on wood, hardly ever get sick anymore. And I used to get like every time the colds would go around, I would get them, and it was because I slept 3 or 4 hours a night. I trained super hard, fucking multiple times a day. And then I worked on top of that. It was too much load. You know what I mean? And I just like forced my way through it, which is fine. You can do that. But I definitely paid the price for it. And I feel a lot better. And I'm a lot happier nowadays now that I focus more on stress. So that is all I got, guys. If anybody has any questions, you guys can ask them for me here in the Zoom, or you can drop them in the chat. Look, I already got one. Yeah, travel for softball is so damn hard time. Meal prep. Yeah, I can imagine, especially because then you add the group element into that. So yeah, I would focus more on like, and that also sucks because you have to perform. So you're traveling, and that's the same as when I would travel to fights. It's like having you come off of a weight cut, you travel well cutting weight, which sucks, you know what I mean? And then you'd get there and you'd finish your weight cut and you'd weigh in. And then it's like you got to figure out how to refeed yourself in 2 days off of, what you can buy at a grocery store or what you can eat at a restaurant, in 24 hours or 30 hours or 40 hours, however long you have till your fight, usually less than, usually somewhere in about a day range, about 24, 25, 26 hours. And yeah, that was absolutely miserable. So yeah, what I would recommend is focus on more on trying to, buy like stuff that you can heat up in a microwave from the stores down there rather than trying to like meal prep everything. Like I'm telling you, those rotisserie chickens at the convenience stores are fucking killer. Costco, just a massive amount of protein for like $5, $6. And then those little rice packets, those little or quinoa or whatever you like, it's like 90 seconds. You throw them in the microwave, heat it up, and then get a bag of frozen vegetables. And then you basically have your meal prep like ad hoc there. So that's what I would focus on, Chantel, in those situations. Because it's going to be so much easier than trying to figure out how to meal prep when you got all your fucking homegirls there and you're traveling and you have a shitty kitchen to use. Like, yep. Steven, yeah, my next month is going to be crazy. I have a rodeo for the next 20 days. Yeah, it's going to be trial by fire, man. Like, honestly, I'm a huge fan of, you know, the best time to start is the most chaotic time because life's always going to be fucking chaotic. That whole, oh, I'll start when it slows down. It's never going to slow down. You know what I mean? There's never going to be a good time. So there's just now, or there's, some hypothetical time in the future that never actually ends up coming into existence because you just, something else always comes up. So I think it's good to start in the most chaotic point because if you can get good at staying aligned and doing your best and making progress during the chaos, like when things slow down and you're past the rodeo season and you have a little bit of time where you're like home base operating smoothly, it's so much easier. It feels like it's like a freebie, So yeah, definitely stay in communication and let us help you through it, man. Because I want to see you fucking crush this. I know you're gonna. Any other questions, guys? All right. Well, I am going to cut out of here and go find something else exciting to do. If you are one of my clients, this will be posted in the group, the replay. I'm going to get those up today or tomorrow. And if you're not, well, that sucks. Thank you guys so much for showing up. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your afternoon, evening, whatever it is.